Welcome back to Sharpen the Point. We continue our look at the stock report and futures bets before we kick off the season. Today, we look at the Big Ten. Starting things off, Iowa and tight ends. They're synonymous things. I think this kid's the next George Kittle, Noah Fant, a highly drafted Iowa tight end. DJ Vonham, kid's absolutely nasty. Came on last year, big frame. I think he ends up being the number one target in this offense. And he closed out the year really strong, 3 for 91 against Nebraska with a touchdown. And the bowl game specifically, 7 for 146 and 1 against Vanderbilt. By all accounts at practice, from the beat writers, he is absolutely destroying this defense, and it's through the route tree. His route tree is absolutely special. So I think he's a guy we could target as a very cheap option early in the season as somebody who can actually catch the football now that Caden Weegan is off the team. Outside of running back, obviously we're going to be in on the running backs for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Moving on, Malik Washington. So most, I would say the upper end, like the more knowledgeable fans are going to know about this kid. 6'5", 230, very big kid. Played well his first 2 years, in my opinion. A guy that I played some of at Maryland. Situation is suboptimal compared to what I would like it to be. I really wish he had a Ty Felton back and the wide receivers that Billy Edwards and Talia Tagovailoa were able to play with. I think that he is a guy that after this year, specifically if Mike Locksley gets canned, that Washington ends up at a very upper echelon school and can really improve his stock in the long run. He does not take a ton of sacks relative to the competition that he's having to play against, comparatively to the offensive line he's playing behind. And he's a guy who can move. He can scramble. Rutgers ran for 164 and 1. That 73-yard touchdown was pretty special in that one. He doesn't rely heavily on his legs. He's a fairly decent passer of the football. Now, I get it. His completion percentage was pretty rough a year ago with sub 60%. But his pass catchers led the nation in drops. So if anybody was hurt more than in the country, there was nobody who was hurt more by drops than Malik Washington a year ago. He can sling the rock. He can run. He threw for 459 and 3 to close out against Michigan State. He's a guy that I think takes another step. He is everything you want Lenora Sellers to be, that he actually isn't. So he's a guy that I want to be heavily invested in early in the season, and a guy that I have invested in during the offseason. Another quarterback I expect to make a jump, not necessarily a legs or a runner guy. He learned behind Max Prosmer for a year, got thrown into the fire last year. Drake Lindsay at Minnesota. I think he gets better. He did not have a great season a year ago, took too many sacks, threw the football fairly well. He's an accurate passer, big frame. They don't need to necessarily open it up. He's going to be heavily protected because of Darius Taylor being back there. If Darius Taylor does go down, I am upset at the fact that Edgeboy is now gone. He was a back that I liked. I do like the weaponry on the outside. I think he can improve you look at this Nebraska game, it's so infuriating that he goes 16 of 20 for 153 and 1, ran for 1. I think he's capable of throwing for 300-yard games, and a guy that I think in the long run can improve, and a guy that we're going to want to keep an eye on. I don't know that we're going to play him a ton because of his lack of running ability, but a guy that I think has long-term NFL potential on this roster. Let's go to the forgotten man. Evan Stewart. So I've bought into this way too much too often. I've kind of relaxed on it. But if we go back to 2024, he missed 2025 with a knee issue. Thought he might return and get some playing time late in the year last year. Did not really come about. He was a guy. I mean, you look at this Ohio State game from 2 years ago. Remember that defense was unbelievably good. 7 for 149 and one. Just a guy that can lead this room on the outside. He was the piece that they were missing last season with De'Corian Moore playing in the slot, Kenyon Sadiq at tight end. They returned De'Corian Moore. They still have a good tight end in Jamari Johnson. So adding Evan Stewart on the outside is going to give them a different dimension that they lacked a year ago, and a guy that I think can be a very, very promising target. The skill set's there. It's just the production has always been quite sporadic for how talented he is. Real quickly on that running back room, there was reports Jordan Davison was out. I think he is back. That was conflicting. De'Aaron Hill obviously is still healthy and a guy that's going to be very good. I think that 1-2 tandem is absolutely unbelievably good. Guy that I'm down on, Carson Hansen. He almost ran for 1,000 yards last year. He was a steady Eddie, not an explosive back. I mean, if you look at this thing, in the Big 12, he had a 65-yard run against BYU. Outside of that, he never went for 30 on any carry. He's safe and just kind of does the job at now being at Penn State. I don't think it translates at all to the Big Ten. I do not like Carson Hansen in the Big Ten. I'm not going to play Carson Hansen. I think he gets passed up by James Peoples and Quentin Martin. So I am low on Carson Hansen. He is the unquestioned one at this moment. But I think Peoples and Quentin Martin have far higher ceilings than Carson Hansen. Y'all know I'm going to be riding the Rocco Beck train, although I absolutely do not like whatsoever the wide receiver pieces around him. Do like the tight ends, though. Tight end room, very good there at Penn State. Antoine Raymond. He deserves a mention. I do like Dylan Lonergan coming over. I wish they would have kept Ian Strong. Antoine Raymond, this has been a consistent thing for Rutgers ever since Shiano returned. Running backs have been very good. They had Monin Guy there, but previously that transitioned into Antoine Raymond. Antoine Raymond had to carry this off. I mean, look at the Maryland game, folks. 41 carries, 240 yards, and a touchdown. Ran for $189 and a touchdown against Penn State. 2 for 62 and 1 against Penn State. I think Antoine Raymond has a monster season. Again, he's a guy that is underrated outside of fantasy circles, but a guy that we're going to want to play a ton of that most of the people know about here. Now, everybody's gotten on to the Jaden Maeva train. I was big on Maeva going into last year. I felt like I was somewhat on an island. Most of the mainstream talkers did not like Maeva, and now they like Maeva. So I'd rather be ahead of the curve. I was ahead of the curve. Makai Lemon now gone. Jacoby Lane now gone. Who makes the plays here? They have some high-end young receivers. Tanook Hines has been missing a couple practices. Not too concerned. Look at the close to that year. 6 for 141 and 1 against Oregon. 6 for 163 in the bowl game when the main two targets sat out of this one. I think Hines takes the next step, is the unquestioned one in this offense, and a guy that I want to play early and often if his price tag is not too prohibitive. I think he steps right into that Makai Lemon role and is an absolute monster. The guy that might fly under the radar is Mark Bowman. because he's a true freshman, tight end, 6'4", 250. Oh my. I mean, if you haven't gotten a chance to see this kid, you're going to want to see him. He screams Brock Bowers. So he's a guy that maybe he develops slowly. Tight end is not a very transitive position in all levels. It does take some time to get there. Bowman could legitimately be the best tight end in the country. They used Lake McCree pretty well in this offense previously, and I think Mark Bowman ends up being the possibly the second best pass catching option in this room. And I do want to get exposure to him early in the year before things kind of get out of hand. Moving into the overs and the unders. So, Indiana starting out. I do like the overall build of the roster. Y'all know I'm a Cignetti guy, and coming over from JMU, I was big on Cignetti. Thought he could do some good things. Now all of the JMU guys are gone. I don't love that. I am high on Kobe Martin. I think Kobe Martin's the best back in this backfield. I know they brought in Turbo Richard from BC. I think he's the safe, steady option, very similar to what Roman Hemby was. They've operated with a split backfield here multiple times. You do have Lee Beebe returning from injury. I still think he's the number 3 back. I know he's getting a little bit of run. I like what Martin did as an explosive player a number of times a year ago. Now, he was mainly in the cleanup duty situations because of how Kalon Black and Roman Hemby, how they played. They were both very steady. He's far more explosive. He's a guy that I'm very interested to see what his role is early in the year. Might be a guy that I want to touch on and jump on in some of these blowout games early. Nick Marsh. So I think all of the big time transfer out of Michigan State. A very similar situation to Cam Coleman going to Texas. The talent outweighed the situation consistently at Michigan State. He just could not get the football to him. He'd be open, and if they got it to him, he scored. He had 7 for 64 and 1 against this Indiana team a year ago. 6 for 75 against Michigan. I think everybody's going to be on Charlie Becker early in the season. I also believe Marsh is probably a slightly higher talent by comparison to Becker, although Becker will be a 1A, 1B situation here. So, leading off the futures bets, Indiana. You got to say that their floor is massive. Problem is I'm worried about the ceiling. They're going to start out 5-0. North Texas, Howard, Western Kentucky, Northwestern, and at Rutgers are all fairly easy wins. I think they're a heavy favorite to beat Nebraska at Nebraska. Although at Nebraska, Anthony Calandria could go any number of ways in that situation. The concern is the Ohio State, Michigan back-to-back with a 10.5 win total. USC could be problematic at home. I don't like USC outside of California. That's been a noted thing. And at Washington is a tricky trip. I think you're looking at likely, I have a feeling that 2 losses feels pretty standard. So at a 10.5, I'm going to take 1 unit at minus 105 to go under. I have them projected at 9.25 wins. And on the riskier end, I'm going to take the under, the alt under, 9.5 for half a unit at plus 240. I think 2 losses feels pretty safe to go 10-2 to hit the under on the main bet. With the Ohio State and Michigan games back-to-back standing out, because they're at the end of a long stretch. They don't get their bye until after Minnesota. So going to Nebraska, then coming back at Ohio or at home against Ohio State, that's probably a game that they're going to struggle in to an extent. At Michigan, another game that's going to be tough. Now, granted, Michigan is going to be battle tested in this spot. Coming off of that, coming off that Penn State game, they're likely to win at home. So I feel pretty good about Michigan being able to take care of Indiana at Michigan in the Big House. Minnesota, then you get the bye, then USC at home. You got to feel decent there. The question is can they drop one of, Minnesota coming off of those two tough games? Do they drop one against USC off the bye? Do they lose at Washington potentially? I think it's likelier that the under 10.5 hits than the under 9.5. So under 9.5 is a much riskier play, but I feel decent about a 10-2 season for Indiana. Looking at the next team, Michigan. Speaking of Michigan, Michigan has an extremely tough schedule and a very good roster. The combination of Jordan Marshall and Savion Hyder give them a massive floor for Kyle Whittingham to operate within. Monster players to run the football. They should be able to run it at will on a number of teams. Schedule is the problem here. Oklahoma, tough game, is at home though. At Minnesota, always a tricky situation. At home against Indiana. At Oregon, tough game. At Ohio State, they just lined up just an awful schedule for these guys. You get Underwood in year 3. I like the wide receiver weapons with Andrew Marsh. Obviously, I've been a monster Andrew Marsh guy all year last year. I'm going to continue that trend. The biggest pickup is probably J.J. Buchanan from a pass catching standpoint to operate as the second option. He is a tight end / wide receiver. He's more of a move tight end. He could create a ton of mismatches. I think if the staff had stayed at Utah, he would be a terrifying weapon in the Big 12. I think he ends up being a big weapon here for Michigan. So the play here for me is their win total is 8.5. I have them at a 10, but there's a lot of very questionable games that I think that they're toss-ups on the road, likely losses. It's a team that the schedule is so difficult that maybe 9-3 can get them in the playoff. 10-2 certainly gets them in the playoff. So I think the best bet here is a half unit plus 260 to make the playoff, with the potential that 9-3 gets them in if they win the right 9 and lose the right 3. Let's say they lose to Indiana, Oregon, and Ohio State, or Oklahoma, Oregon, Ohio State, whatever. They get one against Indiana, win the rest. There's potential for them to get in. There's an argument there. So I think plus 260 at half a unit makes the most sense. Northwestern. Aiden Childs is back. I do love Aiden Childs. I've been way too on Aiden Childs a number of times. I've kind of learned my lesson here. I think they have a decent roster, but a team that I am concerned about overall this season. I think South Dakota State, they take care of business. Colorado, more of a coin flip. They are in the new stadium, which does give some pause that they could do some things. Worry about the overall how this team plays as a unit. I think their win total is 5.5. I have them projected at 4. I think the closeout to this schedule is just very difficult all the way through, really. At Indiana, Penn State, likely losses. At Oregon, likely loss. At Ohio State, likely loss. Minnesota, I wouldn't favor them. Illinois, I probably like Illinois more. Iowa more. I think at Michigan State is a tricky spot with Pat Fitzgerald. Probably wanting to prove a point there. So I've got 1 unit on the under 5.5 for Northwestern. All right. A team that I know a little too much about, probably. UCLA. So I love Bob Chesney. I appreciate everything he did for us. I like Wayne Knight. I don't like Nico. I like overall what Bob Chesney's doing here. I'm heavy on Cal to win that game in week 1. They have a 6.5 win total. I've got them projected at 4.75. I'm going 1 unit on the under 6.5. I think they get wins against San Diego State, Purdue. I don't like them traveling to Maryland. That's a scary situation because Malik Washington is probably a better version of Nico. I do think that UCLA is a better team than Maryland, but the travel we've seen, I've seen it last year with USC. They struggled mightily with Maryland at Maryland. At Oregon, easy loss. Wisconsin at home, I think, is a coin flip game. Wisconsin is a better team at this point right now, but not a team that I love. Michigan State, I think, is a win. Nevada, a win. At Minnesota, I think, is a tough game for them. Illinois at home is a toss-up. I don't love Caton Hauser, but I think Illinois always is going to have a high floor at this point. And then you close with at Michigan and USC, which seem like easy losses. If you say, hey, they're going to get San Diego State and Purdue, that's 2. Let's make Wisconsin 3, Nevada 4, Michigan State 5. Where's the other 2? They're going to need to get 2 of Illinois, at Minnesota, and at Maryland. Or if they beat Cal. I mean, if they beat Cal, then I'm toast here. But I think that this over hedges on winning this Cal game in week 1. And I do not trust UCLA against JKS and that Cal team. I think Cal is very talented overall and a sleeper team in the ACC. I know everybody's kind of on that, but I got it at plus money. I'll take the under 6.5 at minus 130 for 1 unit here. Wisconsin. Everything's going to start and stop with Colton Joseph. Colton Joseph had a very good game running the football at Indiana last year for Old Dominion. He had a lot of good games running the football. The passing is highly lacking. I am not a Colton Joseph fan. You look at this JMU game and see what's his run capability going to be against these types of teams. His passing's not great. It was solid. He threw 2 interceptions in that JMU game. Yes, he had the 98-yard touchdown pass. That was more of a fluke play. It's just lacking. I just haven't seen it personally out of Colton Joseph as far as in that type of environment. He's going to be facing a JMU-esque defense week in and week out. I don't think Wisconsin's particularly talented. I think their best running back now from last year now plays for LSU and Dylan Jones. I do not like this Wisconsin team. I think the schedule is extremely easy. They're going to get the snot beat out of them in week 1 against Notre Dame. They'll win against Western Illinois, win against Eastern Michigan, lose at Penn State, get a tossed-up game to me against Michigan State. I think Pat Fitzgerald raises the bar there. At UCLA is a tough situation. I think getting to a lot of this stuff at plus money's helping. USC is an easy loss for me. At Iowa is a loss. Rutgers seems like a toss up, although I'll give that one to Wisconsin. At Purdue, I think is a winnable game. Minnesota's a loss, and at Maryland's a tough situation. So at a 6.5, I haven't projected for 5.5. I'm going to take 1 unit on the under at plus 110. That's what I got the odds at. I think they get 1-2 against the non-cons. Uh, let's say 3 against Michigan State, UCLA. I think they get Michigan State probably. So that's 3. Rutgers makes 4, Purdue 5. They're going to have to sweep. So basically, what you're looking at is they have to sweep Michigan State, UCLA, Rutgers, Maryland, and Purdue to get to 7. No. Yeah, to get to 7, they have to sweep Michigan State, UCLA, Rutgers, Maryland, Purdue. I don't think they can do that. So I'm going to take the under 6.5 at plus money for 1 unit. Wrapping things up, the bets, a lot of unders. I'm taking Indiana under 10.5 for 1 unit at minus 105. An alt under of 9.5 for a half unit at plus 240. Thinking maybe they go 9-3. I think that's unlikely to hit, but I'll take the 10 to cover me off there. Michigan to make the playoff at a half unit for plus 260. Tough schedule, but I think 9-3 could get them in. Northwestern under 5.5 at plus 100 for 1 unit. UCLA under 6.5 minus 130. That hedges on the Cal game for 1 unit. And Wisconsin under 6.5 at plus 110 for 1 unit.